Hello and welcome back to the Doctor Who Marathon. I'm your host McEdam, and today we're going to be talking about The Green Death, written by Robert Solomon and directed by Michael Bryant. I do not have a DVD for this for the moment because of this lockdown. I don't know if it's still happening when this comes out. As I'm recording this, it is the 23rd of June, and we are still having issues, so I haven't been able to get it on physical media, so I had to watch it on the internet. So I do apologise, because normally I like showing off the DVD, but that's beside the point. So this 6-part adventure sees the departure of Jo Grant, one of the long-term companions of the Third Doctor era. Now, this story is unusual because, unlike most stories around this time, this actually does deal a bit into Jo's departure. You do, throughout the story, you get the feeling of it. As in the first scene, you see Jo Grant reading a newspaper, and she's terrified about what's happening up in South Wales, which I'm from. So this story feels really funny from my point of view because it feels really familiar. Like some of these characters, in terms of like their personalities, I can not relate, but I know people like that. I know people that say boyo all the time and stuff like that. And the story has a lot of stuff with miners. So, and that's a big part in the South Wales industry. So, there you go. I feel right at home watching The Green Death, but that's beside the point. So Jo Grant is horrified about all the pollution that's been created by this company, this tech company, and she's talking to the Doctor about it and how this Professor Jones is trying to stop him, and she believes that Professor Jones is absolutely right. But the Doctor, he's too busy working on the TARDIS so he can get to Metebelis 3, a planet he's mentioned before that he really wanted to go. Specifically, he wanted to get a blue crystal from it, which has properties of basically reverse hypnotism, so it can like cure people with hypnotism. It's never mentioned in the story, but my fan theory is he wanted to get this crystal to basically prevent future hypnotism from the Master, because the Master's main force thing, as you may call it, is that he hypnotizes people. So that's my theory anyway. And they're talking at the same time. They're not really actually listening to each other. The Doctor's too busy talking about Metebelis 3, and Jo's too much talking about the pollution and stuff. And the Doctor, when they do suddenly realise, it's a really fun scene. I think this is probably John Pertwee and Katie Manning at their best, especially when we get later on into the story. But here you really get that feeling that Jo's time on the show is coming to an end, as the Doctor's like, come with me to Metebelis 3, you know, as good as we always do. And then Jo's like, I can't, I need to protect my planet now, because this is the only one we got. And the Doctor's like, tries to tempt her by saying like, this is only one planet, we've got loads to explore. But Jo's taking none of that. Now, the character of the Third Doctor in this one is a bit, I wouldn't say badly written, but it's a bit strange especially coming from this Doctor, who's all about basically, you know, politics and protecting everyone and stuff. It's really strange how in this story Jo is basically telling the Doctor, right, this really bad pollution thing going on in South Wales, are you coming? And the Doctor's first reaction is, I'm going to have to take a little trip first, I'll meet you later. But he does eventually go in it. So we get our first basically scene with the Doctor going in the TARDIS without Joe, and Joe going to South Wales. And the story, this is really a Joe Grant story. I think this story all depends on whether you like Joe Grant as a character. Now, I do, so I personally really enjoyed The Green Death. She meets with Dr. Jones, however, at the moment he doesn't let on that he is. And we get some pretty goofy scenes in which she is trying to talk to him, not realising he is Professor Jones, and trying to talk to him about when can I see him. And she's sitting there and she's making constantly lots of problems for him. And it's a bit awkward at the start. They kind of get off on the wrong foot. But you can see that they warm up to each other. They become very close throughout the story. And there's a great moment where she's sitting out on a stool and it's very quiet and awkward. And he turns to her and he's like, do you know anything about insects? Yeah, why? Do you know one that's about 3 inches tall with loads of legs and is yellow? No, why? Well, because there's one crawling down your leg. And she jumps up and she's like, ah! I really like that scene. It really... And he says, it's like, oh, I was only joking. I was trying to just break the awkward tension. And they have a giggle about it. And, yeah, I really do like these characters. Maybe not as much as the story would imply, because at the end of the story, something happens, which I will get into. But these characters, especially Professor Jones and Joe Grant, are very lovable, and you do root for them. Especially how Professor Jones, he's against this this company, I can't remember what it's called, technology something, basically an oil refinement that apparently has no waste whatsoever, but Professor Jones knows that's complete rubbish. There's got to be some waste somewhere. As you might have noticed from me talking about this story, it is a heavily eco-friendly story. So it's basically Doctor Who meets Captain Planet. Stop polluting the world. But I don't know, this is a great story in emphasising that Doctor Who has always been telling stories like this. However, whether this story is good or bad, it's a bit hard to tell on whether this story does it right. In terms of what the mass opinion is, because a lot of people seem to like this and a lot of people seem to hate this. But I think that's less to do with the pollution message of the story and more to do with Joe Grant, as this story heavily features her. But in terms of the pollution, it's a bit heavy-handed, in my opinion. It's a bit on the nose. I mean, they keep saying like pollution like 100 times, and it makes you feel like it's a PSA. But it's still an entertaining, enjoying experience, and we do get like a murder mystery as these miners, one of them has died in these mines, and they got the skin starts glowing green, and the brigadier, who's a national security thing with UNIT, has to get involved and protect the business to see if it's a part of them. But this guy, the guy who owns it, he has friends in high places, and he basically gets the brigadier to work with him reluctantly. Brigadier knows that he's a bad guy. But UNIT has been set on their tails, and we get a lot of scenes in which the Doctor tries to break into the building because he knows that they got equipment to try and save the miners. Another one gets ill, and Joe and this other miner go down to try and save him, but the elevator gets stuck at the bottom of the mine, and so they need to get some tools to get him out. And the Doctor knows that they've got tools, but they won't give them to the brigadier for, at this point, unknown reasons. The villains in this story is, in my opinion, really cool. You've got like the main like boss of the company. This guy, he reminds me a lot of a more calm and relaxed Vincent Price. He's rocking a really cool mustache. But I like how this guy plays him. He's very villainous, but he's very charming as well. I'm surprised. It's very much like the Master. If there's one criticism I have with this character, is that he could have easily been replaced with the Master. And in terms of the story, you might have actually gotten something a little bit better because, you know, the Master, who doesn't want to see Robert Delgado? But I think he passed away during the filming of the story. I don't know if it said anywhere that if he was supposed to be part of it, but if somebody told me and said the Master was supposed to be in the story, I could very well believe it. However, it's clear that this character is not the controller of the organisation, as we hear this voice which comes up on a screen with a sound wave, and this voice is just so damn cool. Boss, the main villain of the story, he's such a charming villain. He starts off as basically a robot who gives commands, but he has this like a fun personality. I especially like the scene in which Boss and this other guy are basically trying to work out some refinements to the computer system, and Boss is just singing to himself, and the other guy is like, "Can you please stop it? I'm trying to work." Boss is a sentient computer created by a human mind that merged with it. So, and it basically believes like humans are basically not sufficient. So he basically wants to take over the world. Go figure. So he basically has this plan about pumping oil just really quickly and having no issues at all and stuff. However, there's a side effect. When this is going into his mind, this green goo, the waste of it, this green ooze, is killing human beings and changing their cells into maggots. And whilst this is going on, actual maggots in the mud are growing massively, like a size of that. And if you touch them, you get this green effect on you as well, and you die as well. So yeah, that's basically our story. Now, a lot of rumours is that the way they made these maggots is by inflating massive condoms. But as far as I'm aware, that was just a rumour. They didn't actually do that. Apparently they were done by just normal balloons. But looking at them, I don't really believe that. They look like they were made like of polystyrene or something. I don't know. I'm not very good with designing monsters. But anyway, so it's really funny how this story is all about pollution and how it's harming the environment and stuff. But at the same time, we get scenes of the Brigadier shooting and exploding maggots, and nobody takes offence at all. Not even like Professor Jones gives a damn. Yeah. So anyway, there's a lot of moving pieces and stuff, and we slowly get to see scenes of. My favourite part on this story is seeing the chemistry between Joe Grant and Professor Jones, and there's a great moment where they're having like a really romantic scene, which is very rare for classic Doctor Who. You rarely see romance like this, in which after being saved down from the mines, Jo finds out that the guy that she was travelling with in the mines has passed away, and she's gone to Professor Jones for comfort, and he's talking to her, and he's like, there's a brilliant scene in which he's like, there was only one of this guy, there will never be another one like him, even if the world exists for another billion trillion years. And very sweet. But then the doctor kind of interrupts him and kind of sees him, and you could kind of get the feeling that the Doctor doesn't want this. The Doctor wants to keep Joe around, as there's a scene in which he drags Professor Jones. He's talking about science stuff, but I don't quite believe it. It comes off as if he's just using it to distract him and ruining Joe's romantic scene. She takes it lightheartedly as she starts smiling. You get the feeling that the Doctor doesn't want to see her go in. Like the Doctor and the Brigadier interrupt Joe and Professor Jones just before they start kissing. So you do get some scenes like that, and there's some moments where she's trying to help him, but basically she's doing no good. And he just offhandedly mentions that he needs a maggot, and so she, without him knowing, goes to try and get a maggot. And when he realizes, he goes after her, and they get stuck in a mine. So yeah, there's a lot of great scenes with them, and the Doctor's trying to work out what's happening with Boss and stuff. And there's a great scene when the Doctor gets confronted by Boss, and he says something like, basically tricks him. And I love the scenes with the Doctor and Boss, because you get the great moments where he says stuff like, if the next thing I say is the truth, but I tell you a lie, would you believe me? Or something like that. And then the Boss is just like, let me figure this out. And here Michael Bryant's directing is very well handled, I think, in this bit. When Boss is basically thinking to himself, the camera pans get really quicker, showing, even though he's just a computer, there's literally nothing moving. Just the camera movements alone show his tension, his stress. Michael Bryant's directing, I don't think he's not at his top game in this story. You get some great moments, like I said, with the scenes with Boss, and he's great when he's moving the camera, but there are some scenes, especially down the mines, where the scene is just way too dark. You cannot see anything when they're down the mines. Sure, he gets lucky and gets some scenes with some green light, but when there's very little light, it just does not look good. It kind of looks kind of ugly. And a lot of the field scenes set in the fields do kind of look really generic and kind of bland. I think he's a director who works much better in industry than he does with natural stuff. But at least from this story anyway, his directing here is a bit hit and miss. But I digress. So we get moments then with when the Doctor tries to talk to the leader of the company, and he's like, you've got to stop this at once. And he's like, I don't have to listen to you. I'll get one of my secretaries, one of my leading men to basically tell you you can't come in here. And the door opens, and it's Mike Yates. Mike Yates is working for them, and the Doctor gets a bit of a shock. And basically, Brigadiers now have to work for this guy. And this guy wanted a advisor, somebody to talk, like be a middleman. And the Brigadier got Mike Yates. And Brigadier's plan is that Mike Yates would be a spy for them, but they're breathing down his neck all the time. And you get some great scenes in which the Doctor's trying to talk to him, and he's on the phone, and he's basically hinting that there's somebody standing right next to him, so he can't really say anything. And we also get probably one of the funniest moments in Doctor Who history, in which the Doctor tries to get into the building, and he tries these clever disguises on. He dresses up like a milkman and puts on a really thick Welsh accent. Jon Pertwee, this is probably Jon Pertwee at his most Jon Pertwee. If you've seen any interviews with Jon Pertwee, you know that he's a very comedy actor, and he does a lot of voices and impressions and stuff. But when he came to play the Doctor, he took it really seriously, which I find funny. But here, John Pertwee gets to show his A game. He gets to show his impressions and silly voices and stuff. And when he gets in, basically the alarm goes off, and it's like some guys disguised as a milkman find him, and so he goes in the cabinet and he dresses up like a cleaning lady to try and talk to Mike Yates. And there's a brilliant scene in which Mike's going to the elevator and he turns around and he just sees the doctor, and he's right there on the window. Please get rid of him. Yeah, fantastic moments. I really love this scene. But the bad guys kind of know that something is up, and the doctor's basically too much to handle. So they hypnotize Mike Yates to go and kill the doctor, which leads into probably the second funniest thing in this entire story. Oh, the more I think about it, the more funnier this story gets, in which the doctor goes back to Professor Jones' house, the nut house as they call it, and he's just doing some stuff. And then out of nowhere, just underneath the table, pops up Mike Yates, smiling. It's like, doctor. And he points a gun at him. And that's a cliffhanger with Mike Yates pointing the gun at the doctor. Which kind of leads into the next story. The doctor realizes that he's been hypnotized, and so he takes the crystal that he got from Metal Beta 3 and uses it to unhypnotize him. And he makes Mike Yates pretend that he's still hypnotized to go back to the bad guys and say, right, the doctor's dead, I killed him. And he's trying to unhypnotize other people there. He unhypnotizes one person, but yet he gets caught and stuff. And he kind of gets tortured. And really, Mike Yates takes a lot in this story. Poor bloody Mike Yates. He gets bloody hypnotized and he gets bloody beaten up. But there's a scene in which he's just running around as he tries to escape, and he's all beaten and bruised, and he just runs to the brigadier and telling him that he doesn't know what their plans are, but whatever happens, it's happening at 4 o'clock. So the doctor basically does a suicide mission and tries to go into Boss's lair, which is coming up to literally the ending of it. And so the doctor unhypnotizes the other character, the leader of the company. Boss is basically no, don't, you must listen to me. But this guy, now being unhypnotized, basically sets the entire building to self-destruct. Now, when you rewatching this story, I found something kind of strange. There's a bit where he's like, get everybody out, I'll make it explode, and the doctor runs out. And he saves the guy who's the guard right at the front of the building. But what about the other characters that we've seen that have been working there? What about the cleaning lady? And there was this young lad who wasn't being hypnotized, but he was talking to somebody there who was hypnotized. Did they die? Did the doctor just let them die? Where happened to them? So the day is saved and everything's great and ground and proper. And then we get a really touching scene in which the doctor's come on, Joe, let's go. And then Joe is like, Doctor, I think I might be going for a while. Professor Jones has invited me to go to the Amazon rainforest so he can find this fungus. Throughout the story, he's been working on this fungus which could replace meat. Still waiting on that, by the way. But anyway, and man, this last about 5-10 minutes of this story, I must be honest, I did kind of tear up. In which the doctor's basically saying his goodbyes and stuff. However, there's one detail in here, it really puts me off. It feels a bit out of place in my opinion, which doesn't kind of ruin it. The acting in it is just phenomenal. It's just something that always in my head, it always bugs me when it happens, in which basically Professor Jones proposes to Joe, which is way too soon. I mean, you didn't need it. You just needed him to say, go into the Amazon, Doctor, be gone for a long time. Don't go anywhere. But yeah, they propose, and you see the Brigadier then come in, and everybody comes in and they're shaking hands. So, congratulations, well done. And the Doctor just stands there quietly. Man. And Joe Grant's talking to the Doctor, and she's like, and the Doctor, I need to give you a wedding present. And he gives her the crystal from Melopetus 3, basically showing the Doctor's character arc of, because he wanted to go to Melopetus 3, basically being selfish and stuff. And now it doesn't really matter. That part of him is, he's grown up a bit, and so him giving it to Joe is basically him saying, right, I need to be a little bit more mature. And so he gives her the crystal. And Professor Jones is like, don't worry, Doctor, I'll look after her. And they go off and they start singing and stuff, celebrating. And the Doctor, he just quietly walks away. And you could hear the crowd and stuff. And he just walks up to Bessie. And the last shot in this, man, what a powerful imagery in which it has the Doctor by himself on Bessie driving on a landscape with the sun setting in the background. And that's how this story ends. What a fantastic way to end an era. I don't quite know why Katie Manning left, but yeah. So yeah, overall, I personally really enjoyed The Green Death. A lot of people don't. It seems to be hit and miss with the fan base. I would personally say, give some few Joe Grant stories a watch before their story. And if you like her, I say give this one a try. I think it's really, do you like Joe Grant as a character that makes or break this story for people, I think. And also, it is heavily, it heavily talks about like pollution and stuff, so that might be a taboo for some people. So join me next time where we listen to a free audio drama and the Doctor has a little solo adventure. So I'll see you next time for, I believe the story's called Landbound. So I'll see you then on the Doctor Who Marathon.